Now, I recently shared with you one of my clients' wins from May, and it was that they were able to generate over $1.2 million in sales for the month of May. Now, it's an incredible achievement, and it's certainly something that I want to share more about because of the numbers that we're dealing in. Allows you to see exposure to the opportunities, but also the processes that go into making that. And the thing is that regardless of your business, your industry, you can achieve larger goals than you are already achieving. It's going to come down to a number of different elements to do with how much your service costs, your capability. So what's your ceiling of income, depending on what your delivery or your implementation services or processes look like. And ultimately it comes down to your pipeline. Now, I offered out to answer questions in relation to the $1.2 million. And I had some really great questions come through, and I wanted to share them for you on this video to dive into what a $1.2 million month looks like, what work goes into it, but also how you can apply that into your business. Not saying that you have to achieve the 1.2, you might go for 5 million. You might be looking for a $10,000, you might be looking for $100,000. It's all relevant to you and your abilities to execute on delivering those services that will support you in achieving those goals. But also, as I mentioned, pipeline. Now, pipeline is a list of opportunities of people that want to work with you or have shown interest in potentially wanting to work with you. Your probabilities within your pipeline will be able to give you metrics in terms of if you've got $500,000 in your pipeline, based on your existing conversion rate, you are looking at X% based on your current conversion rate. And so that gives you this beautiful view. We use Pipedrive. If you would like to look at Pipedrive, we offer a 14-day trial, and you're able to look at it yourself. And within there, you can plug it in, you can set your probability measures, and you can start plugging in all of your opportunities. Now, when we look at the business that I mentioned, they have always been sitting between a $1 and a $4 million pipeline, depending on their business, on their lead generation, business development activities. And we have been challenged with these peaks and troughs in opportunity development and identification of opportunities that we can therefore then execute. So the $1.2 million was for project services. It was across 2 clients, and it will spread across a 3, 6 month and beyond project delivery. Now, there is no one person in this business that specializes or focuses solely on business development. So these are all delivery specialists in work health safety, and they are responsible for generating their own leads. Now, they do get inbound leads. These tend to be more smaller leads in relation to other services that they have available, but they have a great network, which they've been leveraging across LinkedIn. They've been reaching out to people utilizing our sales success methodology framework, that has allowed them to reach out, engage, share successes within the industry, and then also leverage existing connections to get new connections. So it's very much based on the network, very much based on conversations and what they're seeing. And it is a longer term sales timeline to conversion. So this has been in the making for 3, 6 months and beyond. Okay. Now there'll be about 3 to 4 people focusing on delivery per project, and they're looking to grow the team by about 12 people to support this and their future commitments. Now they have about another $2.5 million in the pipeline. And so the future sales commitments is key. And what I mean by that is by future scheduling. So what was the challenge previously was that they had opportunities, they would fulfill them today, they would stop business development, they would stop networking, they would stop following up on opportunities, they would deliver, and then they'd go back. And this is where we then see those peaks and troughs. So our goal was to level those out. So we found a process that they could meet every single week that they were able to go through. Now, one of the other key areas for closing these opportunities was around giving upfront indicative ideas of the quote, of the cost, because they are high. Now, these organizations can deal with high price points. They can deal with high investment because the scope is large. So it's all relevant. But what we have learned from the past is that often they would go in, they would have an idea, the delivery people would have an idea as to how much that engagement is going to cost. And they would then keep that to themselves, go through all the scope, go through the discovery, build out the proposal, send it out to them, and then nothing, because it would be higher than they were expecting. Yes, it would include everything that they needed, but it doesn't have the communication behind, you mentioned you wanted all of this, and these are the key areas that I've highlighted, and this is what we're looking at, or do that early on in the stages. Now, I've shared before in a podcast around how I did that and actually helped a prospect and turned into a client of mine to think that they'd saved money. And I did it totally unintentionally in my early days of selling. And I share about the fact that I highlighted the investment based on what I'd heard it was. And when I came back, it was about $400,000 less than what I had initially scoped out or just thrown out there when they showed some interest. And they said, it's expensive, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, I think it's about $1 million. And then when I went back, I quickly rang the vendor, had a quick chat, came back and was like, well, indicative, it's actually going to be about 600 grand. And then when we did the quote, it came under 600 grand. Therefore, I saved them $400,000 without really doing anything. And so the beauty of being able to position early on is that you get to see them. You get to see their body language. You get to see what happens in that process. Okay. So the 1.2 million was 2 deals across multiple people doing delivery across 3 to 6 months for large corporate organizations, driving an outcome. Now, in their experience, they do not stop after doing one engagement. They usually stay with them for some time. And some of the organizations, or most of the organizations they work with today, have been working with them for many, many years. And this feeds into lifetime value. It feeds into storytelling. It feeds into the network. It feeds into sharing more about what it is that you do and who you support and what you offer, because it's really important to share compelling stories and information and connect people, whether it be an official case study or whether it just be pick up the phone and speak to Simon. He had a great experience with us, and I'm more than happy for you to chat to him and see what he would say. And so by doing that, we're sharing stories, we're sharing that information. But essentially it comes down to having a strong enough pipeline and also being confident in the offering that you are giving. What I see a lot of is that we see we can help, we can solve a problem, we can see the service or products or service that we'd like to recommend. And then as it comes to quoting, we second guess and we either make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, or we give them like, oh, it kind of looks like this price, it's going to be a bit expensive. How does that feel? We don't do any of that. Okay. So the $1.2 million months are achievable if you have got consistent processes in place. You've got a pipeline of opportunities and you know what goes into delivering them. Now, I got asked a question about profit and within that, and I'm not able to share that because it's not my information to share. But what I would say is that looking at the $1.2 million in revenue, it's really up to the business how that is split out and what their goals are. And I guess really that leads into, do I care about revenue or do I care about profit? Well, I always care about profit as number one. Revenue is a good indicator of whether you are increasing or decreasing. What I found in my years of corporate selling, of tech selling, was that I would focus firstly on revenue. My first year was focused on revenue. My second year was focused on revenue with a profit, a GP, a gross profit target. And then after that, it just was purely profit for me because that was what I got paid on. So be mindful of what you're tracking, because this can potentially fall into vanity metrics, which is why I want to be really open and really share and answer your questions around the 1.2 million. Because it is achievable if you have the right services and the right offerings with the right processes in place. Now, it comes back to, I guess, really sharing a little bit about my journey in sales, in tech selling. And my first year was just over $1 million. I think my second year was somewhere around 3.5. Then we hit the 5 million and then we hit 10. Now, that was my sales of $10 million per year with close to $1 million GP. I left just after my fourth year or fifth year. Now I'm questioning. And so therefore, I'm not exactly entirely sure what the GP was at that end date. But I've got my revenue report still on my laptop. And so what I was able to do throughout that journey was really do what I've shared here, which is track my pipeline, never stop doing my business development. Never, ever, ever. The moment you do, it impacts you in about 90 days. So we want to make sure we never do that. We want to build out revenue where we know we can deliver. And if you get to a point where you are potentially going to risk the delivery process or delivery experience with the people you've already brought in, stop or recruit. Okay, because it doesn't matter about the revenue point. If you are going to burn the people you're already working with, they will not give you a glowing review at the end of it. You will likely have to refund, and that is not a good place for anybody to be. Okay, so I hope this is giving you some insights in terms of how you can build out your own large months, how you can build out larger months. If you're aiming towards the $1 million months, then it is achievable for the right businesses, the right people, the right processes. And it takes a lot to go in there. It takes a lot of consistency to build up. And so consistency in pipeline, lead gen, business development, and then having the right cadences that will allow you to qualify, that will allow you to connect your service offering and then be able to deliver it are really key.